nothing in the water.
Oh, you're right there.
Oh yeah. Little one. Oh. It's 11:30 and we've just anchored in Wellington. And probably got the best downtown apartment in the city. We're just off Oriental Parade, and there's Te Papa, the National Museum, just over here, and the Yacht Club here. Looks a little bit like Christmas, with all the trees decorated. Very still night, and I look forward to have a good sleep.
Hello, good morning, and we have the 27th.
Good morning.
We have the 27th of March, 2023, and yeah, I see you arrived in Wellington, and few days since we spoke. Was not always easy. Some cell reception, no cell reception, and so right now you seem to have again internet, and so I'm very pleased to talk to you again and to see where you're up to. How is your little group? How was the sailing? How has been these days? And yeah, how are you?
Okay, the sound is breaking up. I couldn't hear some of that.
Okay, I just how are you? How is the little group you were sailing? How were your days since we spoke?
We arrived in Wellington. Arrived in Wellington last night and dropped our anchor at about 11:30. And so we're here this morning, and there's a bit of maintenance work needed. So that's being done, and I'm down in the city and preparing some documentation for a court hearing tomorrow. And right now I'm sitting in Parliament grounds, and you can see Parliament buildings behind me. So this is where we are right now.
Okay, and everybody's all right on the boat?
Yeah, we had a good sail. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. It's always tiring.
Yeah, I can imagine. And being up sailing and all these things around the boat is already sometimes a challenge, and being in a group on a tiny place creates also an own dynamic. It's not the usual thing. Probably all of you are usually not in such a defined space, and what is mostly, what I can imagine most somehow demanding and challenging is the mission you are at, and you just mentioned tomorrow the court case. So there I can imagine it's lots of tension in all of you to be prepared. It's all the knowledge which needs to be there in the moment, in the second, because if you speak, that is the moment. It's not, oh, wait a second, I'm gonna come back and get my stuff. Now you everybody of you needs to have it now. So the knowledge has to be there, and also the emotional aspect of us. I mean, everything is based on our emotions. Emotions are moving us. So I can imagine it's not easy And I know that what happened in Parliament last year hasn't been easy at all for many people. They witnessed lots of difficult moments. It started in a nice, very nice intention, the days at the Parliament last year, and ended up in a really terrible event. And I would like you to talk about what happened last year and how this is related, that you are going to the court tomorrow to be somehow the guidance for Tim, because it's going to be Tim's court case and it's related to what happened last year. So the Parliament in Wellington, can you tell me a bit about, first, that we have an idea, the Parliament, what's the specificum in Aotearoa, New Zealand about the Parliament?
Okay, so we need to go back in history and go back really to Te Tiriti Waitangi, a treaty between the Crown of England and the Crown of the Maori Nation that was signed on the 6th of February 1840. And that basically allowed the British system of governance to come onto the land in order to govern the settlers. Not
Sorry,
people, but the
sorry, just a second. Sorry, it's just a second. You are breaking a little bit and it's not loud enough. Could you eventually, is there a possibility to be closer to the microphone?
Sure. Is that better?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the history of parliamentary governance here in New Zealand goes back to 1840, and it goes back to Te Tiriti of Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi, which was signed on the 6th of February and was a treaty between the Crown of the Maori Nation and the Crown of England. And with that treaty, the British government would take care of the settlers, and the native people would continue to govern themselves. This was restated in the various Constitution Acts, but primarily the 1852 Constitution Act, and so the Parliament and the Parliament buildings are behind me here in Wellington. It first started up in Auckland, but ended up here. So
sorry, excuse me, sorry, you just broke off. Can you just repeat the last two sentences? You were not.
Yeah, so the parliamentary system here really began in 1840 with the Te Tiriti of Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi. And it was here to provide a system of government that would basically take care of the settlers who were coming out from Europe, and the native people would continue to govern themselves. And this was enshrined in the 1852 Constitution Act, where the native people would be self-governing, and really continues. And that's the origin of the Parliament, and now it sits in Wellington, and it sits in the buildings behind me.
Okay. So the Treaty of Waitangi is, from what I understand, has been created for the settlers. It's binding them and giving them a kind of frame how they could be on the land and govern themselves. So it's a somehow also a sort of a real estate agreement or something like that. How could they live on the land?
Yeah,
it was not their land. They couldn't just come and say, "No, this is ours."
Well, it basically
actually happened quite often in the past. Colonization was, here we are, we conquer, that's ours. So it never happened in Aotearoa. that this land has been really conquered by the settlers. So that's why they got this Treaty of Waitangi as a real estate agreement, how they could live. So it's for them. Is it correct?
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. So it really basically said that the lands would continue in the ownership or the kaitiaki-ship, the guardianship of the native people. And although Queen Victoria had a preemptive right to purchase land, no land was ever purchased. No penny was paid and nothing received. There were some other agreements along the way where payments were made, and you know, there's a lot of history to go into around this, but you know, the treaty is a very significant foundation document.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So now something happened, I just mentioned before. Last year, people gathered at the Parliament ground and started in a little action, little meeting somehow. People came, but more and more people gathered all around the country. People came over to be there. They brought their tents, they brought different possibilities to stay. There were stalls, and was a kind of, I wouldn't really like to compare as a festival, because it really wasn't about creating a festival. It was to create a very clear statement about what the people would think about the parliament, about the legitimacy of the parliament, about what the parliament was deciding in that time, about different things. So people did not consent. All over the country, people did not consent, and few or many of them decided to come and gather in front of this parliament. So I see that in that period of time, many strings came together, different aspects, are also different point of views, and also different point of motivations why people came. So we can't come from a point that everybody had the same knowledge about everything. It was more, some people just came because they just felt something is not all right in this country. Something is not going on in a way where we feel this is where we want to head to. And so some people came with lots of background about the, I would say now, real history or deeper history, about the legitimacy of the parliament and the people which are, working inside. And some came with just a little bit of knowledge. So I and we all observed in our in the group we are working together, that there was a kind of a gap of knowledge. And could you just give a short overview of what were the what has been the motivation of the people to come last year to sit for more than 2 weeks peacefully in front of the parliament ground, which never happened before, from my understanding?
Okay, so a convoy, following what happened in Canada with the truckers' convoy, a convoy set off from each end of these lands to arrive in Wellington as a protest against COVID mandates. And that was the primary motivation, but there was an underlying theme that is much more significant to me, and that is that the lands here themselves were taken by force in 1846, and they were again taken by force in 2022. So so these were tribal lands, and these lands here was called Raurimu Pa, and this land was never sold. In 1846, Governor Grey and 300 militia, using heavy artillery, pushed the native people off these lands and took the lands. There had been some prior agreements about lands that they could occupy, but they forcibly took these lands. What's significant in 1847, a year later, is that my great-great uncle, Judge Henry Chapman, made an important decision in the courts that native title could not be extinguished. And so for me, there's a strong element here of that connection to that decision in 1846. Now, when we come forward, and we come all the way from 1846 with the occupation by Governor Grey and moving the native people off, we had a peaceful assembly here and an occupation of these lands. And the word occupation is very, very important, because whilst everything else was going on with the convoy and a protest to Parliament, there was enough people here for these lands to be occupied by the rightful owners, the native people who were the kaitiaki of the lands. Now, this is not a new thing. There are many claims being made through the courts, and largely they've been ignored. But the paperwork, the paper trail is there. And so what is happening is that back on the 10th of February 2022, a number of people were arrested, including Tim, who I'm traveling with. And so that matter is in the courts tomorrow. And it's in itself, it's a small matter. It's a small trespass matter, and there are not enough grounds to actually have a prosecution. So, but the other issue that is there, and the other issue that we want to make, is that you cannot be trespassed from the tribal lands which you have never sold and which have been enshrined in law by the treaty 1840 and by subsequent decisions. So that is why I'm here, and I will be standing in the court with Mihi, who is a direct descendant of the chiefs of those days, and I am whangai to Uanuku, whangai to the tribe who, and that means by tribal adoption, the tribe who have those lands. And I will be standing in court to speak on behalf and to make the point. The important thing being that the Speaker of the House of Parliament, the Speaker who is in charge of the grounds and the building and the operation of the Parliament, he has been described as the lawful occupier of these lands. And all of our paper trails, even right up to the day before the first arrests, makes it very, very clear that the Parliament here are squatters. They are unlawfully occupying lands that belong to the native people. Now, that's been tolerated over the years, but when it comes to the crunch, it becomes very, very important when we go a little bit later, and under Trevor Mallard, Speaker of the House, about 500 police in riot gear with all the rest of it marched on the land and removed the people that were here peacefully assembled and peacefully occupying these lands. So we have an echo from 1846, Governor Grey, back through to 2022. It's arriving in the court, and assuming that things go to plan, I'll be called as a witness, and I will present the background on the lands here.
So, but what happened exactly last year?
Does that help?
Yeah, what happened last year?
Well,
So you mentioned people didn't
what happened
agree
last year was that.
Yeah, so just you mentioned people didn't agree with some measurements around COVID, and some people didn't agree with other things. So they came together, and more people came. So they were living there. They had installed their toilets. So that it was a well organized, but not by somebody, but by the people themselves. It was not something which has been organized by a certain group. So just people came because they felt there is a need, and organically it started to be organized in itself. So there was something for the kids. Some we know from Northland, Hare Krishnas came down to cook for the people. So there was a very impressive process. People who were there were very deeply touched how beautiful it was. There were speakers every day talking around different topics, but also because we were close, we were following this very closely by people on the ground, that there was something going on which was undermining more and more, like water coming under the rock and creating a kind of erosion. So at a certain point,
Yeah.
it tipped
Yeah.
over.
So what happened?
Please, yes, thank you.
What happened was that the people were drawn to be here, and people from all walks of life, people from all age groups, and many people who had been mandated out of their jobs. And so they arrived here, and they were peacefully assembled. And what I think really happened is that this assembly of people was such a shock to the parliamentarians that they overreacted. That is my estimation of it. And then on this particular day, they started to single out people and drag them out of the crowd and arrest them. And so this court hearing is really the flow on from that. And there's a number of hearings happening in the next few days where people who were arrested at that time are going through the courts. Many cases have been dropped, and the foundation for any prosecution is very small. The police didn't follow their own procedure. It was shambles. But this is the basis of what was happening at the time. So it was broken up. The peaceful
go on.
Peaceful assembly was broken up by the police on that day. Now, the following day, there was a letter sent expressing disappointment from the native people, from Ngāti Tama particularly. And then following that, the parliament itself was trespassed from these tribal lands. Now, they can't tolerate that, so they ended up using force to remove them. The people were here for about 3 weeks.
Okay, 3 weeks. And at a certain point also there was some radiation also going on. So at a certain point, violence started slowly by 5G or whatever frequencies. So this became an issue. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, so LRAD, L-R-A-D, which is a long-range audio device, crowd control device. It's basically a weapon. These devices were put on top of the buildings. They were actually Anglican Cathedral, which is also sitting on native land, and directed at the people here. So the Parliament were using weapons to try and control the people here, and this is particularly offensive. And this happened a little bit later than when the first arrests happened, but this type of activity increased throughout the protest. In the early stages, they had loud music playing from the Parliament buildings 24 hours a day. You might remember an old song from the 80s, the Macarena, was played at high volume. There was a lot done to aggravate the people that were here, who continued the peaceful assembly. Later on, the people planted in the crowd, disrupted the crowd. We have evidence of that as well. So there was quite, it's quite a complicated affair, and quite complicated to describe in just a few minutes.
So, but we can say as a summary, it started peacefully with the intention of talking and suggesting and coming together and see what can we do to change something. Yeah. And it became at a certain point violent, and everything got stopped. And the last day, I remember the pictures was quite heavy, even tents set on fire. It was very shocking to see how this whole peaceful gathering got completely stopped. And also in the media, wasn't absolutely not appropriate information about what was really going on. So
No, there was yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah,
I mean,
it was a constructive. The end of the whole thing, 500 police and riot gear came in. They had there's photographs of police pushing supermarket trolleys full of bricks and bringing those onto the grounds. There were people going around who were here to inflame the situation, and it was nasty. It became nasty. What was a very, very peaceful thing became very nasty, and that nastiness was instigated not by the people, but by the authorities who place themselves in these buildings behind us.
So something which is going on all over the world, we can always observe that it's there are people all of a sudden they appear and there are bricks lying somewhere, some agitators, and then the media is there and they show exactly this picture. Like I remember in Germany, where apparently some people wanted to occupy the Reichstag, and when you look closely to footage of the private people who are filming with their phones, whatever, you see that there was a lot of manipulation and people are planted by purpose to create chaos. So this is what happened also last year. People came onto the ground to this gathering. Amongst the people were troublemakers, serious troublemakers, and because of course, people are not organized for and prepared how to distinguish between who is who. There was I remember people trying to help and to figure out who is doing what, but it's impossible because we face a very well organized.
Okay.
Good. So we were saying that after these nearly 2 weeks of peaceful gathering, the whole event got stopped with trickery, with planted people, and with
Infiltrators.
overwhelming power of police in civil, police in official, and their official
Correct.
and so
Correct.
yeah and people were okay.
I've lost
We were talking about the parliament last year, what happened on the parliament ground, people gathering, coming from all over the country, and rising up their voice, talking. Talks happened, speeches were held, and after a while, nearly 3 weeks, everything became a mess, violent, etc. We talked about that, but what you mentioned before is very, very interesting and extremely fascinating, and it's just amazing. The people were gathering on a land which is actually occupied by the parliament. I mean, they just took the land, and you mentioned 1852, I think, was it, where it was taken by violence from the native people. And
it was 1846.
Yeah,
1846.
1846. So you will talk about that tomorrow in the court case, to point out who is here really legitimate or not. The parliament don't want to hear that. The court is not really open, I can imagine, to hear that either. We know that courts are part, justice is part of the whole system, the worldwide system of the structure we have right now. what do you expect from a court if you know that they are not set up for freedom, for real rights? So why are you going into court?
Okay, so we've got,
why is Tim deciding to go to court?
there's a number of different things here. And I know many people who you would say, hey, look, why are we interfacing with these dead institutions? But when we go in and you go in as a living man or a living woman, then you're heard in a slightly different way. And sometimes the court will just acknowledge that they have no jurisdiction at all. But if we are to exercise our sovereign right, we cannot just ignore these institutions. We have to interface. We have to be able to stand and say no. We have to be able to go in there peacefully, authoritatively, really well informed, and present our case and stand our ground. So to me, being able to move through these systems is part of what sovereignty is about. If we're unable to do that, then who are we? We have to, the key things are, where they get their authority is that they'll treat you as an infant, an imbecile, or a pauper. So we have
Why
to show
imbecile?
that we are competent.
Sorry,
Sui
Tanya.
juris is what it's called.
Can you explain the link to imbecile? Why is an imbecile?
Well, they just think you're crazy. If they think that you are crazy, if you do not understand their language, if you do not understand their process, they will assume you cannot manage your own affairs. You are incompetent. So it's really important that we can display competence, and that means displaying competence with their system. We can take this back to biblical law. We can take this back to Genesis 26:28. God gave man dominion over the land, the air, the waters, and all the things that creep. Now, when I talk about all the things that creep, to me, that's the birth certificates, the driver's licenses, the passports, all of those artifacts that come from the state that are not you of day-to-day life. They can be useful. So, but we have to know how to use those. We have to know how to stand in our authority as a living man or woman with authority over different aspects of life. So when we talk about land, we're talking about title. And here we have superior title, not some piece of paper created by the state, but the superior title to the land. We are the native people of these lands. When we talk about the air, we're talking about trust law. We're talking about ecclesiastical law and how we manage our affairs in those higher realms. And when we talk about the waters, we're talking about commerce. We're talking about companies, we're talking about transactions, banking, all that sort of stuff. Because the waters are represented through admiralty law, maritime admiralty law on the water. And we mentioned that briefly with our previous interview, and we can go into it again further at some point. So it's important that we can demonstrate our competence in all of these matters. And then over all the things that creep, we have to be able to know who we are, that we're not these pieces of paper or the bits of plastic or the little booklets that we get given as identification, because that is not us. It's a separate representation. It is not the soul, the spirit, or the flesh. It has no blood that moves, no blood that flows, and has no backbone. So we just got to have a backbone. We've just got to walk into those places, say who we are, and express that in a way that they must acknowledge. And so we will invoke the higher law, not legislation, but law. And And so that's what we'll be doing.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's somehow, I would say, I mean, for me, it's very clear. If I hold a piece of plastic in my hands, I know that's not me. And I would think that most of the people realize this too, that a piece of paper is not them. So please, of course, we know it's not us. So where is the problem? So where it becomes a problem? Because I know that I am the living flesh, I am the living woman, and I have a piece of paper which I call my passport. Please tell me, or could you explain a bit further? Because this is probably a question now to get answered. How can I see the line in between? Because I
Okay.
know that I'm not the plastic.
There's a maxim in law: he who creates owns. So if we think of the creator, if we think at the highest level, there was a creator who created men and women. Men and women created governments to protect the private property of the men and women. Governments have created corporations to provide services to the men and women. Funnily enough, though, what they've done through the birth certificate and through these other pieces of documentation is that they've created a corporate entity called the person. And the person is not you. And the government, because they created the person, they have authority over the person. And if people think that they are the person, and it's generally written in all capital letters, the name, if people think that they are the person, then they become subject to the rules of the government. And they are only just rules, that's not law. But if we stand in our authority and we claim our minor estate, and this is, when we turn 21 or 18 these days, then you claim your estate, you claim who you are, you claim the keys to the kingdom. And you are the authority. We are the living. We are the men and women. We create the energy. We create the resource that makes everything else work. We're not slaves to a system. And we're certainly not identified by pieces of plastic.
So does it mean that I just can walk off and say, okay, until now I was listening, when I was called, with the person was called and I answered. So I just now can decide, oh, I won't respond anymore. I just walk off. Is that really possible? Because I see quite often it's not that easy. I just can't just say, oh no, I understand the game. I'm not part anymore of that. Goodbye. This is not that easy. So otherwise you wouldn't be in a court tomorrow. So otherwise we wouldn't. So many consequences for many people who are walking the path of sovereignty and understand or comprehend the differentiation between person versus living man or woman. But they can't just walk off. How I'm sure it's a huge topic, it's a big thing, but this is what you are doing right now, as I understand. You all of you, I mean, Tim tomorrow in the court, he walks in as a living man. Is this correct? And he will say, no, that's not, I'm not the person. And so how to walk off from this limitation, from this somehow this corset of the person?
So there's a lot of learning involved and a lot of unlearning. We've been conditioned by society to think in particular ways, and a lot of that conditioning has had us in bondage. It's had us as slaves to a system, and this is a system that's gone. The idea of slaves and masters, it's not appropriate in this new age that we go into, the age of Aquarius. We're entering the age of, we're leaving the age of Pisces, which was the age of kings. We have to stand differently these days. Now, if I decide that I want to play the piano, I can't just get a piano and think, oh, now I'm a pianist. It requires practice. It requires study. It requires dedication to be able to embody these principles, embody this learning, and then to be able to articulate that. So it is, it's not impossible. It's just an accident of timing that I started a long time ago to learn this stuff. But it is something that people can do. And by standing in one's own authority, even at small levels, we are able to make a very big difference in how we are received in this world and how we are treated in this world. The only way that those in the Parliament buildings behind me could possibly have any authority over anything that I was to do is by way of contract. The government that reside in these buildings, the government of New Zealand, the Queen and Right of New Zealand is its official name, is a corporation registered on the Securities Exchange Commission in New York, as are so many governments around the country, around the world. They're corporations, and so they only have any sort of consent from the people by way of contract. So we have to know how we are contracting. We have to know how we are interfacing with these systems and stand in our own authority. And unfortunately, in our society now, with so much technology, it becomes more and more difficult. So we have to be aware of this. We have to be aware what we agree to when we sign in on something online. We have to be aware of who we give authority to and what authority is actually being given in the fine print. If we do not speak up and stand in our rights, then we have none. Our complacency around this is what will build the cages for our children and our grandchildren. It's really important that we stand with this now.
Okay, yeah. So Tim experienced something last year when he went to the Parliament as a man participating at this gathering, coming together and rising up his voice.
Yeah.
So what happened to Tim that now he is in this? He is involved in this court case. What happened?
Well, he was arrested, and he refused to give the name, the passport driver's license name, and so they held him unlawfully. They held him for 72 hours before he was able to be released, and he was only released after he was coerced into signing his paper. And so that's completely unlawful. And unfortunately, that's the type of thing that happens. But, you know, the thing is that he's a strong individual. He has no fear of the system, and is able to stand his ground and to do so very, very comfortably. So fear is a huge thing, and people are afraid of being locked up. They're afraid of the idea, I might get arrested, I might get, punished in some way for not complying. Well, that happens on the slave plantation. We have to be able to stand in our authority and peacefully and eloquently and be informed and do so. So that's the intention.
So how did he come out after 72 hours? And what happened afterwards?
Well, he was released. After that, he released and he was back on the streets. And it's just been a process over the last year of a number of court hearings. This is the 4th hearing, and this is the actual trial. But there's been other events along the way that have been of less significance. But in all of those, he's managed to stand his ground very, very well. So I have no problem with what he'll be able to do, how he will speak, and what he'll be able to do. Yeah.
So for he's accused for what?
Trespassing. So the crowd, basically, they said to the crowd, that the grounds, they gave a warning, or they say that they gave a warning that the grounds would be closed, and if anyone remained on the grounds after it was closed, then they would be arrested. And but the people didn't hear these messages, and the video footage that you've received, that when you listen to this, there are none of those messages being heard by the crowd. So the crowd had no idea. And then what happened is that the police started dragging people out, dragging them by the hair, etc. So yeah, it
So
just continued from there.
yeah, so, but even if they would have heard this, there was no real right behind to tell the people to go, because in first place the parliament and the parliamentarians are not legitimate there. So how can somebody who is occupying without any right, how can somebody enforce others to leave if themselves they have no rights? So this is a very I mean, this is a bit of a schizophrenic situation. This doesn't work. The police had no right at all. And I remember that at the beginning they realized that, because the police left after a week, I think, or something, because of different letters. It was very clear the police had no right to enforce anybody to leave.
Just after a couple of, yeah. This happened a couple of days later. So in the early stages, and you know, it's I think the thing that, you know, we start to get into some big topics, but what happens with a parliament and a government is that they make rules for their club. It is a private society. So if I belong to the tennis club, then I'm bound by the rules of that club. But if I'm not a member of that club, I'm not bound by their rules. So what happens here is that the Law Society and others have formed a parliament, and that is its own private society. And if we look at the legislation that is generated here, almost all of it, in the early, this act binds the crown. It does not say anything about living men or women. But through ignorance, people think the authority exists. It is just social conditioning that has been quietly put upon us over many years that has us think that the authority is here. Now, in society, we need services. There are many people who require health care, who require all sorts of social services, and it is appropriate that we have systems to be able to provide those services. The thing is, when the system itself thinks it is bigger than the people, then we have a problem. It is the people who run the system, not a group of parliamentarians who act in some sort of arrogance, thinking that they have authority over the men and women. It is the other way around. They work for the people. He tangata, he the people.
I couldn't hear you. You broke off the last sentence. Tangata, you saying tangata, and then you were gone.
He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. The people, the people, the people.
Yes.
That's it. We the people. We are the authority.
Just coming back to Tim's case. So when was he arrested? At the beginning of the occupation, or when this happened?
Just in the early stages. In the early stages, the first arrests.
The first arrest, okay.
And then the police backed off.
Yeah.
Then the police backed off and everyone backed off.
On
and
what
then
fact?
The people were here for another couple of weeks.
Okay, just to have this a bit of a timeline. So when it started, then very soon the police came in. Then they got a notice. Can you go into this notice? What happened that the police backed off? They didn't back off by themselves because they had no, they just changed their mind. There was a fact coming in. Can you please tell
It was a trespass notice.
a trespass notice? Okay.
There was a trespass notice. Yeah. And I'd have to go through my notes to give you the full timeline. I can't. It's a bit much straight off the top of my head, but paperwork was served. Paperwork was served here in Parliament to the Prime Minister, to the Governor General, to the Chief Justice, to the Commissioner of Police. So all of the Attorney General, the Speaker of the House, Trevor Mallard, all of that, they all had fair notice that they were in breach of the law. The law is different to legislation. They would fair notice that they were in breach of the higher laws, and in this case, the laws that come from England that are superior to these ones here. And that's really quite a long story to go into. So if we go back to 1986, there was what I would describe as a coup that happened here. In 1986, the prime ministers and parliament of the day repealed the 1852 Constitution Act. And we go back to 1947 to a piece of legislation called the Westminster Adoption Act, where some terms and conditions about the governance of these lands were transferred. The governance was transferred from England to a parliament here, provided that they did not alter or repeal the 1852 Constitution Act. And Section 71 of that Act provided for the self-governance of the native people. And but in 1986, they repealed that Act, contrary to the 1947 Westminster Adoption Act. So they cut off their own head. And since then, there has been no lawful governance on these lands. In 1988, we had a piece of legislation put in place through Westminster, England. And that's called the Imperial Laws Applications Act. And that brought back the common law of England and the rules of equity. And it states very clearly in there that anything through this building here is inferior legislation. It is secondary. It is not the superior legislation. In 1993, another piece of legislation came through Westminster called Te Ture Whenua Māori Māori Land Act, and that brought back self-governance for the native people. So the trespass notices that were served on the Parliament here were under that imperial legislation from England, which is a higher authority than anything that can come through this building here. And so that's just a very, very brief introduction there.
Okay, and tomorrow morning, what time does it start?
Well, we have to be in the court buildings by 9:30, and it will go, there's other events happening, and it'll go through by alphabetical order. And so we will be later. And ready. So there's no particular time at this stage. We just have to be ourselves ready by 9:30 and could be called at any time.
And so it's gonna be the first time for Tim in such a situation, or has he any experience to come as a free man on the land?
This is the fourth time that he's been in court over this matter. Some of those have been teleconferences, but this is the fourth event.
Okay, and this is a final court case now. This is the end.
Yes.
And is there anybody coming?
The others were preliminary hearings. This is the trial.
Okay, this is a trial. Okay, the others were the hearings. Good. And what is what is his expectation? What is his aim for tomorrow?
Oh, he will be found not guilty. We have, there is no case. There is no case. There's been other cases and reading through, and people were found not guilty because the police didn't follow proper procedure.
Yeah.
So this is just a charade.
And anybody is going to come? Rather than you?
We'll have quite a few people there.
Okay.
There'll
And-
be others there. I don't know who's going to be there.
Yeah. So actually, he could also claim some personal injury compensation after. I mean, he's been retained for 72 hours. Things got lost. I heard about personal stuff got just lost by the police. Jacket and so but the fact of being retained against your will without any legitimacy, could he claim a kind of compensation?
Look, that is what we hope to be able to address. Whether we're able to address that or not, I can't say. Those issues certainly exist.
Yeah.
But sometimes in these hearings, the ability of the court to deal with those matters might be limited. So I don't have personally. That's what he's hoping to do, but personally, I can't have any expectation around it. All my expectation is to be able to go in and assist the process. I'm sure it will be thrown out, and but to make a point about whose land this is.
Yeah. So on a bigger scale, what are the consequences? So we know now. I heard that for Tim, he's gonna walk out of this court and he won't be guilty for whatsoever. Maybe a compensation, but on a bigger scale, higher scale, what could be the outcome? I mean, generally for this nation, for these people, let's say, better than nation. I mean, we know that we have a very difficult.
Well, there's a number of cases. There's a number of cases, and the important thing here is that we put things on the record. We have the opportunity to speak. This is not a protest. This is an action that's been initiated from them, and but we will use that opportunity to speak and to put forward the facts of the matter as we see them. And every time that we do that, then it is just a little chip that we take away. So we just have to keep going and make small advances. This isn't going to change the world, but it is going to make a small difference. And it's really important that we stand, everyone in their own authority, and do what they can. Not everyone's able to stand up in the courts or go through that. That can be very stressful for many people. But if you're confident in those environments, you can go in and you can exercise your rights and express who you are, and not cower to the system that is based on fear.
Yeah.
It's set up to make people feel afraid, and there's no reason to be.
So your role in this, how you see your role in this court, in this trial tomorrow? As it's not about him, but why are you there?
I'm there, firstly, as
I can't hear you.
a brother who stands. I'm there primarily to support a brother in a difficult situation. At the same time, I'm there to stand for Uanuku and the lawful owners of these lands. To stand as a native man and make a difference where I can on that matter.
Okay, I couldn't hear you. The microphone was a bit not muted, but the sound wasn't that great.
It's a strong wind here.
Yeah, yeah, it's cold.
I'll say it again.
Yes, please. It's important. It was very important what you just said.
Yeah. I'll have to finish reasonably soon. I'm there firstly to stand in support of a brother, stand in support of a friend, and we must stand together. We must stand together. Secondly, I'm standing to support Uanuku and the people of these lands. I'm standing to help clarify who the lawful owners of these lands are. It is not some corporation listed on the Securities Exchange Commission of the United States of America. It is the native people. And so we have to stand in that authority when we can as well.
Okay.
That's why I'm there tomorrow.
Yeah. Yes. And the significance of coming on a boat is you demonstrated also your right of travel with a flag. So have you been with a specific flag? Have you been somehow? Is there anybody there who asked you?
No. Yeah, no, we just drop our anchor. That's it. There's no problem.
Okay. So if
it's just, we yeah.
Yeah. So may I just ask you a last
We're just in a designated anchorage.
Yeah. So just may I ask you a question, because a boat is a vessel we can travel with all over the world. So now you are in the waters of Aotearoa, so there is no question what flag you have on your mast, or Tim has on his boat. But if he would go whatever, let's say to the Seychelles, and so as you said,
Yeah.
a flag, in our first conversation you were saying it's a constitution, it's not just a piece of fabric, it's very, very significant. So with Tekara, this flag given by William IV, could he just come into a port in the Seychelles, coming with some saint from Aotearoa and wanting to exchange to Seychelles from the Seychelles? Would this be possible?
Well, the thing is that this is possible in theory. And so what we have to do is to demonstrate that in fact. And so this is about diplomacy. This is about communication. This is about letting people know and exercising the rights of Indigenous peoples to travel. Now, we can go to the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, and it starts off, I think the first words are recalling that ancient peoples have always traveled and always had diplomatic. I can't remember the words exactly, but it starts off in the very first paragraph to talk about this. So those ancient people have not disappeared. Those Indigenous people, those native people are still here. The right to travel is still there. So it has to be recognized. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that might unfold.
Interesting.
There's a lot of work to do.
Wow. So we're going to see if he's going to continue travel or not. We will see if there will be more sailing tours. Right now you arrived in Wellington. This is the first step, and tomorrow is the next. And actually that's not quite right. The first step has been undertaken a long time ago, but it's one step in a long journey. Somehow it's a journey of the it's a hero's journey. When we stand in our own sovereignty, if we decide, okay, I want to walk the path for freedom, to be free, to be self-determined, to be more and more who I am truly inside, and I want to shine what is inside, and I'm not a slave, I'm a free woman or free man. So this is a long journey, and it didn't just started a year ago. I believe it started a long time ago, and this is just another step on our path of sovereignty, and there is much more to be done. And a court hearing, or now it's a trial, is another step on this voyage. So I wish you all the best for today. that you get a bit of sleep. It's been hard being always on these shifts in the middle of the night, I can imagine. And it's cold. It's not so summery anymore. Our last interview was very warm. Now I see it's cold. And yeah, hopefully we find another little moment to update a bit. Thank you very much for your time. I wish you all the best, all of you, Tim and all the others on the boat, also the kids. And from my heart, all the best. And hear you soon, see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I've got to go and do this paperwork.
Okay. Good luck with your
I've got a lot to do
paperwork.
this afternoon.
You alright, sir?
Yeah. I got your back, brother. We got your back, brother. We got your back in.
Hey bro, why are you here today?
We all know why we're here.
Yeah. Are you leaving?
No way.
Not leaving? Proud of you. It's not going to be forever. Sleep when you're dead. Huge stakes. Yeah.
I'm sick of doing those marches and nothing's happening. We just all go home and then nothing changes.
Isn't it odd that Jacinda hasn't even come down just to talk to us?
It's not ironic. I don't expect anything from her. She just went on a news report as I was driving down. I heard it and she was saying, oh no, everyone has the right to protest. But you know, I feel comforting that 95% of the people
Okay. Proud of you, woman. So proud. And you mean.
Hi.
Why are you here?
Oh my God, we're fighting for our lives.
Yeah.
Now. We're fighting for our lives.
What do you think about what's going on right now?
It's criminal.
Yeah. Have you seen anything like this in your life?
Never,
Not New Zealand, right?
never. I watched the Canberra scene yesterday. Thousands of them peacefully protesting. None of this shit. Our police attacking its citizens. Oh my God.
You're holding to push the line, to hold the line?
Yes.
Hold the line.
I'm a grandmother. I'm 66 years old.
66 and you're on a front line. Hold on, let's put the camera up. Has this affected you in a real personal way? Like,
Absolutely.
are you able to share? Just within a
I
minute?
lost all my family. They're not here. They're with Jacinda. So, you know, my friends, everything. They're gone because of the division.
What's that done to you? Like, the psychological damage of that is huge, right?
It's huge.
It's like mourning but knowing they're still around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love you. I'm so proud of you.
It doesn't matter that my kids will know that I held the line. Them. They don't get it now, but they will.
Yeah. There'd be a lot of people bowing their heads in shame, right?
Yeah.
Because it's happening around the world now. People are waking
I
up to
know.
it. But here, we're still this...
We're here.
Yeah.
Our police are at war against us, their own citizens. Well, when are you going to go to the police after this? It's horrific.
Love you. Proud of you. So proud.
So when we walk around with this EMF meter, not only are we getting 4.5, which is massive, off the top of the beehive, you go around to the backside of the protest, and funny enough, what you see over there is the British Embassy, and I'm getting 9.5 off the corner of the British Embassy. There is no particular reason why anything should have, there's no reason why we should have that much EMF in an area.
And you were saying yesterday that it was nowhere near this.
And yesterday it was nowhere near this. Yesterday I was getting like a 2.5 occasionally, and I thought that was ridiculously high. That's why I came back today to do more scans.
Far out. Hey, thanks, mate. Thank
Okay.
you so much for this.
Hey, sister, I love you. I'm so proud of you. So proud of you.
and may you arrested. Please leave now.
Police. Just put your badge down and stay. Yeah. We love them. We're all hurting. Stand with us. You know it. We know it. We're all hurting together. We ain't leaving. United we stand. Divided we fall. Come on, Aotearoa. We're better than this. Kia kaha, Aotearoa. Stand together in peace. Please stand in peace. Stand in peace. Come on. Keep it calm. Just be cool. We came in peace because we love freedom. We love choice. Come on. I came because my wife lost her job, 23 years serving her communities at GP. She loves people, she cares for people. She lost her job because she chose not to have an injection. Our household income halved. How do we pay the rent? Yeah, I'm not moving, bro. Not moving. I don't want to live in a shit world like this. Not moving. Come on, mate. Come on, mate. Come on, mate. No.
Back up!
Second after. 65 years. Okay. Take her away. Take her away.
No, you go away. This is our land.
Take 3 steps back.
Yes! Yes! Freedom! Yeah, how are people going to respect you? How are you going to walk around knowing that you're against the people? We ask the people to come to work for us and they don't work for us.
Move.
Stand with the people, brother. Oh, look at your eyes, bro. You're one of us. You bleed like us.
They're telling us we're trespassing. We've been shown no trespass notice. We're not going to get convicted of anything. So let's not make it disorderly behaviour. We're not disorderly, okay? No disorderly behaviour. We don't want that charge. We're going to go peacefully. The only thing they can get us for is breaching the peacemaking. Okay?
Like the strong ones, do you?
I've got a weak one.
blood on the ground. Keep the line. This is going all over the world.
Partner and my kid's grandfather all were here on the first day. My partner and my kid's grandfather were a couple that did get pulled out and assaulted on the way out. My missus, honestly, I've never seen her in the state she's in. She's had been telling my kids in a way out of fear and out of pain, oh, don't come close to me, because they want to jump on their mum and say hello. She's still very stiff from being pulled out from the police when she was sitting down. And our concern is this concert is a big distraction. We should be using the time to educate people. We should be using this time in remembrance of every person who's died from the vaccine. We've got thousands of kids, old people here, animals, and a lot of love here. And a concert is going to bring a lot of bad people to this area. It's going to be the after party when the club's closed, and it's not important. What's important is the truth. My darling's at home because she's too sore, and she wanted to be here, but she needs the rest because she's still very stiff and she's very sore physically, mentally. So I'm here on her behalf and everyone else who can't be here. I love you all.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, it's a massive impact to Sean's family alone. You know, being here with his family, his children, his wife getting arrested. You know, this has got to stop. And we're here in unity. For those of you coming in right now, welcome. Sit with your heart as to why you're here. We're in unity here. There's no infighting. Don't bring drugs or alcohol here. That's not what it's for. Go and do it somewhere else. You've had 2.5 years to do that. Okay? Now we want to hear from Robert, and you know, just before I honour our amazing New Zealand police officers, they really have been amazing after Thursday, and Robert has a message for them.
Kia ora. Kia ora, all you wonderful, beautiful, amazing, deplorable people. You're all amazing. Yeah, I was here on day 1, day 2, whenever the incident took place, and it was actually a beautiful thing to see. As ugly as it was amazing to see. It was amazing to see. It was really beautiful to see people holding that line, and it was very touching. But my message today is to our wonderful police officers of the New Zealand Police, not the institution, but each individual officer. And if I may, we all know that in amongst every single officer here today, there are 1 of you, 2 of you, 3 of you that don't want to be here. You really don't want to be here. And my message and challenge to you today is for 1 of you, 2 of you, 3 of you to lay down your hat on the steps of Parliament and cross the line. And I'll tell you something, I know you're worried that you have a mortgage to pay, you have a family to look after, you have children to feed, and we know that. But I'm telling you, if you cross, 1 of you crosses the line today, we will look after you. The people of Aotearoa will look after you. And not only that, you will be a hero to all these people, but an inspiration to your fellow officers. So I implore you once again, please cross the line. Join us today. Kia ora tāna.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for all your coverage as well of this event. There's a lot of people who've just tirelessly done that. And you know, that's what brought a lot of us here after the sacrifices those initial people made to come down here and show what was really happening. And we were watching the live streams, and then we were watching what was on the news, and we thought, We need to go there. We need to also show it what's really happening here, what the plight of the people is. And one of the people that I'm about to introduce now is, as far as I'm concerned, the greatest warrior in this country right now. She's a fighter. She's a powerful, powerful, powerful woman. I'm honoured to know her. And I'd like to welcome Carleen Hiriora.
Atamori e te whānau. This is my third time getting up. The first two times I was very soft in my message. But this morning is a little bit different. Because this morning I'm not only speaking on behalf of the people out here in front of me, but I'm speaking on behalf of all the people standing with me on this stage. For the last 2 days, I have heard nothing but people thinking about packing up and leaving because they're losing hope that we have lost focus on what we came here for. I want to say something real quick. I'm a musician as well as I was in hospitality for 23 years before I had to step down from my job. I love music. It is a massive part of my life. And I love that we have music. But where do we draw the line and start really getting our message across? I know people have come here to support lifting the mandates. But as soon as you lift the straw, the back of the camel is still broken. The mandates were only the straw that broke the camel's back. The issue is governance. The issue is these politicians. The issue is bureaucrats. The issue is centralized power. I'm here to speak on behalf of the over 1,000 people that have approached me over the last 2 days right here on this whenua. That they're losing hope, that we are not fighting for the right cause. And I've got big enough balls to get up here and say what the people want to say. And that is, not no more mandates, no more government. I want to say this to our people that have been our MC, running this stage and the microphone. When you start controlling the narrative of a people, you cause an uprising. We've been controlled for 200 years. I am not going to let my people be controlled on what is said and what we fight for. Let's get to the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is the centralized power of this corporation. They are illegal. They are fictitious. And anyone who has aspirations to walk in there and carry on their mandate, the people have another message for you. No more government. So let's start it. No more government. 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 I know that's scary. I know that's scary for some people. There are some people here who are not prepared to be self-determining. I know there are some people here who are not prepared to stand on their own mana. They still want to be controlled. They still want to be governed. But look around you. Look what we're creating together. We are creating a way of living that is by the people, for the people. That is all we've ever wanted. All these people standing here with me today, and I know a lot of you out there who aren't quite prepared to stand up and say what needs to be said. I hope that what I'm saying right now resonates with you, because the one thing I didn't want to happen
was for a whole lot of people to leave because they want more than just the mandates lifted. They were packing up. They were getting in the car. So I took it upon myself to call together my whānau that I've been working with for the last 6 months that have been fighting in Northland day in, day out. That is why Northland has the lowest vaccination rate. Some of the hardiest warriors, people have given up their job to stand out on the street every day, day in, day out, delivering a message. We have had enough. So all we wanted to do today was to inspire people and give them hope to not leave yet. That together we can achieve what we want, and we can all work together to create the future we want for our tamariki. And the only way that is going to happen is when all 120 of those people and their little minions are held accountable for murder, culpable murder, grievous bodily harm, coercion, genocide, and crimes against humanity. There are now 4 active investigations into all of those things I just said. Have you seen any one of them picked up by the New Zealand police to be questioned? No. Have you seen any one of them brought to a public forum to answer any of those crimes? No. Then what the hell are our police doing besides harassing and hurting the people? We're the ones that are victimized by these bureaucrats and politicians. If any one of you done what they've done, you'd already be locked up. How you got locked up for holding the line? Peaceful, legal protest. 4 active criminal investigations and not a damn thing has been done. It's why we're all here. And what we're all going to do is we're going to stick together. And I am going to put a challenge out there to our organisers, whoever you are, to our administration team of this organisation, whoever you are. If you get on the ground and you listen to the people, this is what the people want. Simple. We want every single person behind me in those buildings removed and held accountable, and we are not negotiating. If you are here to make a stand for that, so that we can move forward and never have to look over our shoulders ever again,